Has this ever happened to you? I have a brand new water bottle, and I can see too much of it. A blank water bottle can be an unsightly bore. Luckily, using our patented technology, there is a solution. There is? There sure is. It's called stickers. These incredible devices are covered in glue on one end and funny, attractive designs on the other. They are the ideal solution for any water bottle in need of a little pizzazz. How do I acquire these stickers? Well, fictional customer, I'm glad you asked. Just go to wildgreenmemes.com, that's wildgreenmemes.com, to grab your very own wild green stickers. Wow, thanks, mister. Now what do I do about my fridge? Just wait until we tell this guy about magnets. wildgreenmemes.com. This is Wild Green Streams. I'm Rhett, and today on the show we have Cameron Duke, writer, director, and narrator for the YouTube channel MinuteEarth. In addition to creating sciencey stuff for YouTube, Cameron is co-authoring MinuteEarth's upcoming book, How Not to Go Extinct, and co-writes and produces the Science Minute segment of CBS's Mission Unstoppable with Miranda Cosgrove. Cameron, welcome to the pod.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. And that all sounds like a lot when I hear you say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an impressive resume. That was only part of it, too. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming, really.
So MinuteEarth started back in 2011, and I think of it as one of the classic science YouTube channels. What's it all about?
So MinuteEarth are short science explainers focusing mainly on things like natural sciences, earth sciences. I bring a lot of biology into it, but yeah, we're a team of illustrators and writers and just general science nerds that just like to talk about science and like to make science videos and kind of get what we're fascinated by out there in the world.
So the studio that you're talking about, Neptune Studios, also makes Minute Physics, Minute Food, XKCD's What If. How do y'all decide what kinds of shows to take on?
Oh, well, so that's a pretty big question. Here, I'll start from the beginning because it kind of grew over time. So Neptune Studios really started with Minute Physics probably 12 years ago now, and slowly expanded. MinuteEarth was added about 10 years ago when Henry Reich, who started Minute Physics and is, I guess, the founder of our studio and everything. His dad Peter, who's a biologist, decided, well, we don't need to just do physics videos. Why don't we go ahead and make like biology videos and earth sciences and stuff? And so that's how MinuteEarth was created, right? And now that ball has just rolled on to culinary arts and short videos and yeah, our most recent addition is the XKCD What If channel. But how we decide what to take on is not that complicated because I mainly just do MinuteEarth. That's my role. I'm just producing stuff for MinuteEarth. Kate, who, if you're familiar with the Minute Food channel, she's entirely in charge of Minute Food, and then she's on MinuteEarth occasionally. And every once in a while, like Henry is the one who does Minute Physics and so on. So we're a small team, but we divide it pretty well, I think.
What makes a topic a MinuteEarth topic?
Man, it has to change the way I see the world when I learn it. And I'll tell you something. Usually, I know a good MinuteEarth topic when I'm reading through something, and it just hits me in this way where I just kind of have to sit back and like read over the same thing over and over again. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was reading about meteorites. And here's the thing. I don't even remember what I was doing at the time. I think I was like looking at the difference between stony and iron meteorites or something. And I came across this chart that was giving us the breakdown of where all known and recorded meteorites have been found on planet Earth. And, they've been found on all of the continents. But the thing that jumped out at me was that a good 67% of all known and recorded meteorites have been found in Antarctica, which is this thing that just freaking blew my mind, because I just thought, that doesn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me. And so I brought that to the team, and I was like, I think I want to make this video about like why meteorites are in Antarctica. And Kate and David, the other two writer and directors for MinuteEarth, said, yeah, sure. Why are they found in Antarctica? And I said, actually, I don't know right now. I'm going to find out, but I think it will be a great story to tell. And so I ended up contacting Randy Korotev, who is he studies meteoritics. As a side note, if you study meteors, you study meteoritics, because meteorology was taken. I learned that during all of this topic, during this thing too. Anyway, I ended up talking to him. He's a professor at the University of Nebraska, I think. I don't know if he's listening to this and I got that wrong. I'm very sorry. I asked him, why they're all found in Antarctica, and like how deep you have to dig for them. And one of the funny things he told me was like, oh, you don't have to dig. They're just sitting on the ice. And I thought, hold on, what? And then that's when he started explaining that there's this whole conveyor belt thing where the meteorites will get buried in the ice, and then they'll get pushed up as glaciers are kind of sheared away by the wind as they're pushed up against mountains. And so you end up finding these areas of what they call blue ice, which is this ice that's been compressed for so long that all of the air has been pushed out of it. So there are no air bubbles in it. And so when that blue ice is exposed, as it's being pushed up and being sheared away, it's carrying all of these meteorites with it that have been buried in the ice for, millennia probably, Sure. And they just get deposited just on the ice. And so people who go to Antarctica to find meteorites, they just go and they just pick them up off the ground. And that whole journey that I went through learning about that, that's a great example of something that makes a fantastic MinuteEarth video, is like, if I'm just so excited about it, I have to tell everybody I know about this weird thing, then I know I have to make a video about it.
With the meteorites, is it that they're less dense than the blue ice that they're on top of? Like, are they actually floating, or is it some other process that pushes them up to the surface?
So that's the fascinating thing that I also learned during this, is that it's not that they're less dense. What happens is they get embedded within the ice, right? Because they hit and they get embedded. And there is a density effect going on. We only tend to find stony meteorites, because iron meteorites, they sink too far down into the ice. And so I guess to answer your question is that some of them are too dense. I guess they end up just getting buried permanently. But the stony meteorites are light enough to actually get embedded and carried with the ice.
Cool.
And so like meteorites can fall anywhere on the planet. And so Antarctica, this is fairly large. It's got all of this land area, I guess glacial area. I don't know what you would call it, right? Sure. But all of that's moving. And so it not only catches all of those meteorites, it drags them with the ice and then sticks them all in these convenient locations at the feet of mountains.
Crazy.
I know, it's wild. I love it so much.
Do meteorites fall everywhere equally? Is that the thought? But they're just more findable because of this one process in Antarctica.
Yeah. So obviously 2/3 of the Earth is covered in water. So
right.
If they do fall equally, and there's some research that suggests there's a slight bias actually toward them falling equatorially, just because of the ecliptic and whatnot. But it's not a huge bias. But then again, most of them just fall into the ocean.
Sure.
The rest of them fall in places where they won't be preserved super well. That's why most meteorite hunters tend to go to deserts. Because you've got those arid conditions, and you don't have a lot of vegetation for things to get kind of obscured by, things like that. So yeah, you'll find meteorites in deserts, and Antarctica happens to be just a gigantic desert that also does the job of sorting for you, I suppose, for lack of a better word. Yeah, I know.
Do you have any topics for MinuteEarth videos that you want to do, but that you haven't figured out how to put into a condensed form yet?
Oh man, I'll tell you something that we're working on right now is a video on that exact topic. Who knows? By the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be released, so I'm free to talk about it. So if you get to look into MinuteEarth's Google Drive and all of our file structure, we have a folder for scripts called On Hold. That is sort of just the purgatory for stories we couldn't figure out how to tell. And it grows all the time. I'm constantly throwing things in there because I get excited about an idea. I write something up, or maybe Kate or David does, or somebody, and then we realize somewhere along that process that the story just isn't working out for various reasons. Either it's not a good candidate for MinuteEarth or whatever. We have one that is in that On Hold folder more than any, and it is that kind of white whale of making a video of trying to describe what a species is.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. As I'm saying it, you're reacting like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, good luck making a 3.5 minute video about that. And that's the problem. That's the issue. And there's kind of a funny story about that is the reason why that video has become such a joke. And we're actually making a video about, like, kind of a meta video about science communication with that as an example of like how we keep trying to tell that story, but science is messy and doesn't always lend itself to nice, cleanly packaged stories all the time. And that's one that just doesn't fit, despite, the fact that we're incredibly interested in it. And so we're making that meta video. And one big part of that video is that basically every single one of us has pitched that idea and has tried to write it up. And right after I joined MinuteEarth, because I've been with MinuteEarth for about 5 years, so a little less than half of its time as a channel. That was one of the first videos I tried to make. Like, I was in a pitch meeting, and I came into it, and I thought, I've got this great idea, best idea for a science video ever. And then when I said, what is a species? The other writers laughed.
Because they had already thought about it and had trouble with it.
Exactly. Yeah. It was funny is I was a little offended at first until they took me over to the On Hold folder and showed me their versions of that story, and there you go. It has not been made and probably won't be made by us, just because it's not like it can't make it. It's just we have a very specific format, and so not everything works.
Do you find that I've noticed this incidentally, that I think just because of how many and like something about the kinds of topics that y'all cover, sometimes you'll come out with a video and it'll be like in this bizarre way topical, like that it couldn't have been on purpose, but like even that reminds me of like literally not just what is a species, but the difficulty in talking about what is a species reminds me a lot of the not a dire wolf that just came out.
Yes, I know. That's incredible. We were talking about that today, yesterday. Today's a different day than yesterday. We were talking about that. Like, how do you define this like chimera thing? And it's funny how that tends to happen a lot. Like, I think I made a video last year about the Titanic and how there are bacteria basically dissolving it and how it's going to be gone in 50 years. And that came out right around the time of I think it was like, I forget who it was, some group trying to announce that they were going to try to make some preservation effort for the Titanic or something, which I thought was pretty cool because I don't think it's common knowledge that it's disappearing, that it's just slowly vanishing.
I bet that group, if they saw the video, was excited that it got some coverage.
Yeah, but you know what? That does happen. That does happen to us, though. The topical thing, and I promise you, we're not trying to be topical pretty much ever. There are some notable exceptions. But we take way too long to make videos, and we go through way too many storyboards and everything to purposefully tackle anything that's in the news or like a hot science topic, like the new paper, the new thing everybody's talking about, because it just takes too long.
Right.
So whenever that happens, it's just a happy coincidence every single time.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes there's just some ideas that are just in the air and they
Right.
come out in
Yeah.
weird ways from all directions. I have a few science questions from recent MinuteEarth videos.
Oh, hit me.
I find that the titles of your videos are great because they're either things I've always wondered about or things I've never thought to wonder about, but you have to click it because you're like, okay, now I need to know that. So why don't all rivers make canyons?
Oh, yes. That's another one I could have talked about because that one was such a journey trying to make that video too, because that was a question that I had wondered for a long time because I had just visited, I live out in Colorado and I had just visited the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park for the first time last year. And that's where that question started because I grew up in the Southeast. I grew up in Tennessee and, you know, there are tons of rivers and tons of water, but they don't flow through 1,500 foot deep canyons, you know, and I always thought that a river was just eroding its stream bed over time. But I recently moved from Asheville, North Carolina, which is on the bank of the French, which is built along the French Broad River, which is actually the oldest continually flowing river in North America.
Huh.
And it just kind of calmly weaves its way through the Appalachians. It doesn't have any significant canyons, not like you see out west. And so as I dove into it, I realized that it has more to do with continental uplift than any sort of river erosion. So if you think about a river settles into a shape as it flows out of the mountains and heads toward the ocean. It has a starting level and an ending level. And due to a lot of physics and stuff that I don't really want to get into right now, because I have to admit I don't fully understand it all. That's why I have experts that always help me with videos, because I get curious about these things and then I go talk to them. And it was actually Dr. Sharon Bywater Rays at the University of Northern Colorado that helped me with this. The way that she explained it was basically, you know, if you have like the Grand Canyon, you've got the Colorado River, and it doesn't want to move. It kind of likes its stream run. But, you know, how many ever thousands of years ago, there was a phenomenon called tectonic uplift, the Colorado Plateau, and like all of the West rose. And the Colorado River, not to, you know, personify it, but I'm in that kind of mood, didn't like that. So it kind of acted as a buzzsaw that just cut away the plateau just to stay in its shape. So it's not that, say, the Grand Canyon or the Green River or the Yarlung Zangpo in China. It's not like any of them are digging down underground for any reason. Physics doesn't work like that. Instead, the ground has risen up. So next time you go to the Grand Canyon, I want you to picture something. The Colorado River down there, way down there, is actually where the ground was about 20,000 years ago, or whatever the time scale is. All of this has been pushed up. The river's largely stayed at the same elevation.
That's insane.
Yeah, they just buzzsaw through these plateaus as they rise up around them. So the way that I tend to think of it is that those canyons actually form by kind of growing up around the rivers. The rivers don't necessarily carve down into them, which really changed the way I thought about how rivers work. That was entirely new to me. One thing that you're probably going to point out here is that a lot of the videos I get super excited about have absolutely nothing to do with biology often, which is kind of funny because that is my graduate degree is in evolutionary biology.
Sure.
But often I find myself, this is what I love about my job. I get to dive into all sorts of esoteric science that is not familiar to me, that I didn't learn in school or that I didn't teach when I was an educator.
Yeah.
And I find that I can dive into those things with kind of the unfamiliarity that I'm taking into it. Like I'm seeing all of this for the first time. And I can get really, really excited about it, but I can pay attention to what excites me as I learn, and I can use that to teach to other people, if that makes sense.
It doesn't surprise me that you'd be interested in that too. I feel like that kind of crossover goes all the way back. I remember that Darwin was really inspired by geology ideas when he was coming up with all of his stuff. And a lot of the kind of proto-ecologists and proto-evolutionary biologists were like big interested in geology, and before those subjects even were really that different.
Well, they were just naturalists. They were just people curious about the world around them, and they made an effort to just pay attention to anything and everything. And the thing you know them for is just the thing that they were able to contribute to us. But they were intellectually omnivorous people.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I try to be myself.
Right. I think it's a good way to be. I think I can understand why working as a professional scientist, someone would specialize, but especially doing some kind of science communication or media thing, I think it really lends itself to people who are just broadly curious about everything.
Yeah. Like because of that, I always felt I never really completely fit in as a scientist. Mm-hmm. That's why I never pursued science professionally. Like that was my intention, like most graduate students. But I ended up not getting my PhD because I had spent 2.5 years studying the intricacies of bird song, and I couldn't imagine just doing that for the next 5 or 6 years. As fascinating as it is to me, I kind of went through this crisis at the time of thinking, well, am I a bad scientist? Am I, it is because I feel like I'm not necessarily suited for research. And now that I've been in this science communicator world for so long, I find that that's an incredibly common story. Like we're all people who, for the most part, love science, but didn't necessarily want to focus on one thing because there's so many avenues you can take. There's so many things that you can read about. I can study paleontology for an intensive 3 weeks and learn how we understand dinosaur metabolisms indirectly because I am interested in that. And then I can spend the next 2.5 weeks studying bee ecology, and I get to do that. And that suits me so well, but I didn't realize that when I was a scientist. So if you're out there listening to this and you were in that position, there are things you can do. The people you're probably learning science from on the internet have been there.
Yeah, right. I had a very similar story to that. What were you studying with the bird song? Like, what question were you trying to answer?
Oh, yeah. So song sparrows are a pretty ubiquitous bird. They're not the prettiest little birds. They're these streaky little brown and white things. You're probably familiar with them. Mm-hmm. But they're called song sparrows for a reason. And the reason they're called song sparrows is because they sing these really beautiful songs, but they don't just have one stereotypical song. Instead, they sing songs composed of all sorts of different little syllables. We can think of them as words that they assemble into sentences. And so in a way, they kind of have their own little rudimentary language. And so my master's work was trying to record and decode some of that language.
That is so cool. What kind of information would you get out of it?
Okay. There's one really key syllable that they use, for lack of a better word, and it's called a trill. Lots of birds do it. And so you know how birds have two like vocal cords, like syrinxes? Mm-hmm. Like they can produce two separate voices at one time. So the trill involves like going back and forth between a high note and a low note. And so if you look at it on a spectrogram, if you will, you'll see these two alternating notes. And the distance between the notes and the faster they occur is harder to produce. Right? So it's easy to do. It's easier for them to do two notes that are close together and to do it slowly than two notes that are far apart and quickly. You can think about it as trying to clap your hands. You can clap your hands either loudly or quickly, but you can't do both. There's a trade-off. That's a pretty roundabout way of saying that there are performance levels to these trills, and we found out that high performance trills are used to say like defend your territory, to kind of show like, I'm stronger than you because I can sing this more difficult thing. And it takes energy to produce, so they don't do it all the time. So my, when I was a grad student, I told everybody my job was just to go piss off birds. So I would do these playback experiments where I would play songs of different identified types. Some that had high performance trills. I would go on to another bird's territory and I'd play it for him just to see how mad he got. And those little birds are vicious. Seriously, like some experiments that were done in my lab used stuffed song sparrows, and those experiments didn't last very long because you could not get the bird to stop attacking the stuffed bird.
That's crazy.
Seriously, you go onto their territory and you start playing these songs, right? And if there's an actual bird there, they don't even care if it's fake. The little guy will swoop down and start pecking its eyes out, and you just cannot. It's like you can't get it to stop. It's horrible. So some experiments had to be modified.
We have a show that we're working on. We've only done one pilot for it so far publicly, but it's a parody sports show, and it's footage of birds around bird feeders interacting with each other. And when I started working on it, I thought that I was going to have to go through a lot of footage to get like interesting moments. So basically we're commentating on it as though it's like ESPN or something. Mm-hmm. But we have hummingbirds in front of a bird feeder, and literally every minute that there's a hummingbird in front of that bird feeder, there's another hummingbird scoping it out or doing some kind of a dog fight. They don't typically hurt each other actually because they're so good at coordinating, but it's incredible how much of their lives are taken up with some form of not quite ritualized, but like well choreographed conflict with each other.
Yeah, hummingbirds are shockingly and violently territorial. It's incredible. Yeah. But in my experience, it's usually when they're up here in North America. Like if you've ever gone down to Central America, there are these hummingbird gardens where there's like hundreds of hummingbirds all overwintering together on the same, in the same region. And a lot of them are docile enough that you can even put out your hand and they'll land on you, which is an experience I've never had outside of like Costa Rica because like ruby-throated hummingbirds are just, it'll be a great sports show. I'll tell you that, especially if you're featuring hummingbirds all the time, because man, they're so agile the way they can just Top Gun their way around the dog fights, man. Yeah, that'll be a fun show.
Are horseshoe crabs what peak performance looks like?
Oh man, do I believe horseshoe crabs are what peak performance looks like? Yeah, I mean, like think about them. They've been around for a long time. I mean, like if you can think of a certain animal that's just been kind of stable, I guess, until we started draining them for blood, it's probably the horseshoe crab has been solid.
A lot of our northern hemisphere listeners are starting to get blanketed in floating yellow tree sperm right now, but it turns out that that's not what it is. What is pollen?
So there's a story behind this one. That story actually came from back when I was teaching. I ran into that misconception a lot when trying to teach the concept of alternation of generations. Often students will think of pollen as plant sperm, but actually it's a lot weirder. Instead, alternation of generations, what it does is you have the big plant that you're familiar with is called the sporophyte, and it produces spores that then produce these kind of sort of clones. So they're not genetically identical because they reduce the number of chromosomes by half, but they're different. They're different from sperm in the fact that they're literally their own functional plants. Botanists refer to them as gametophytes which means gamete producing plant. So like the trees outside, like I'm looking at an ash outside my window, that's the sporophyte of the ash plant. And so the distinction seems pedantic, and I'll give it to you, it kind of is. But when you look at bryophytes, mosses, mm-hmm. that bed of moss on the ground, that's actually the gametophyte. that's the one that would be analogous to pollen in a flowering plant. So there are in flowering plants and all plants like life histories, right? Their evolutionary histories. There are these alternating forms, right? Pollen is a weird example of it because it's so highly reduced. It's optimized to do one job, but yeah, their life cycle, especially if you look at mosses, yeah, they're separate. They're separate plants that just kind of bounce from one form to the other, from one generation to the next, which is a hard concept to get across to students. But it is still one of my favorite facts about plants.
Yeah, when I found out about that, it was completely mind blowing that the organism is the gametophyte. Yeah. It really I can't even really explain why, but it's like if someone told you that like down was up, but only sometimes.
Yeah, like I think even as some, when we think about reproduction, right? We think of there's sexual reproduction, or you can clone yourself. The various ways you can do that. And I think we feel like we're familiar with both of those. And then you have the vast majority of living organisms that you can see around you at any given time are doing this kind of other thing that is not fully one or the other. Yeah. Like I can, yeah, I'm looking out my window and I see hundreds of trees out there, and they're all doing this bizarre, almost alien seeming mode of reproduction. That was one way that I pitched that story. It's like, I want to make a video about alternation of generations, and when I say it like that, it sounds very jargony and stuff. But then I was like, well, what if I tell a story about aliens who instead of going out and finding mates, they just make little clones of themselves that then go and do that for them. Right. That'd be bizarre, right? And then, but actually, those aliens are all around us on Earth. They're just not aliens.
Why are caterpillars?
Oh, probably resource allocation, right? Like, so they don't compete with the adults, right? You want to, is this in reference to the Y Metamorphose video?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, that one's really cool because that was a question that, so I actually didn't write that one. That was one of Kate's videos. Sure. But I edited that script and I learned so much about metamorphosis in that time. One thing that I really liked about it was the fact that it's one way to make sure that you don't eat all of your baby's food. Huh. Right? Like if you lay an egg and your offspring come out and they're a very different form than you, have different mouth parts and whatnot, they can chew on leaves while you're often, eating something else. Maybe you're like hunting insects or what have you, then you're not cannibalizing each other's food resources. But often the adults for insects, right? Like what caterpillars turn into often don't eat, right? They don't have mouth parts like damselflies and whatnot. I mean, caterpillars don't make damselflies, but the same idea. Right. Still stands. So yeah, resource allocation. Don't eat your babies out of house and home. That's a good reason to metamorphose.
It's interesting to think about that. I've seen that as an explanation or some version of that for all kinds of stuff. Like osprey have different, they have sexual dimorphism in size, so that the males are a lot smaller than the females. Not like a lot and like nature can do a lot, but like they're noticeably smaller. And some thinking that I've seen on that was that it's so that they catch different fish and they'll go after different resources. I don't know that that's actually the reason why it's selected for like that, but it was just something that stuck with me a little bit.
That is interesting. Like when it comes to birds and feeding your young and trying to allocate resources, there is a lot of really, really weird stuff that goes on. Like how why eagles always lay 2 eggs in a nest?
No.
This might be a little dark for your podcast, but it's because eagles are predators. They're very, very territorial. And they really often only have enough resources on their territory to support one chick. And so when they lay clutches, they typically lay 2, and then they hatch 2. And then there's this phenomenon. It's awful. It's called obligate siblicide, where the bigger one often will push the smaller one out of the nest. And the reason for it is because it's kind of insurance to make sure that they don't spend an entire breeding season raising just one chick and it has some genetic abnormality, right? But they can only really feed one. So that always makes me kind of uncomfortable when they do like the eagle nest cams and they show them in elementary school classes. Thinking this is gonna be a hard biology lesson for these kids.
They need to wait until there's just one left to start with, and then show that off. I think I saw there was like a Radio Lab about that a while back, where they had a nest cam for some bird of prey, and people were very unhappy at that situation. Yeah, well, and I guess when a lot of people encounter it, they think something's gone wrong. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that's how they do. How do fish get to isolated mountain lakes? They get pooped, man. They get pooped, Rhett. That's how they get there. Yep. They paratroop or parapoop out of a mallard's digestive tract. This is the craziest thing. It's like a plant thing. I never thought about an animal dispersing that way before. Oh yeah, it is wild. There are so many isolated lakes, like glacial lakes and what have you, that don't have any connection to other water sources. But yeah, that's most likely how they get there. There are other ways that they get there too, like Fish and Wildlife Services will do this ridiculous thing where they basically just like drop fish eggs out of airplanes or helicopters to stock lakes, but they only do that in some places. But yeah, it's ducks often doing that for us. Most of the time when we drop animals out of airplanes, it's usually fish or like sterile mosquitoes and stuff like that. But are you aware of the time that the U.S. government relocated a bunch of beavers in Idaho, and they basically paratrooped them out into the Idaho backcountry? No, I've never heard about this. Yeah. There was a project and oh man, because I'm speaking extemporaneously, so I can't remember the name of the project. But it was a government project. I believe it was to relocate beavers from an area where they were overpopulated, and to move them into areas where they were underpopulated. And the way they chose to do that was to put them in these little padded crates with parachutes on them, and the crates, when they landed, would pop open, and so the beavers would crawl out and then find a place to live. And a shocking number of the beavers, it was actually really successful. Like most of the beavers actually were completely unharmed, and now there are stable beaver populations like backwoods Idaho that still persist to this day because their great grandparents were basically booted out of the back of an airplane. That is such an alien abduction story. It's got to be the closest thing to an out-of-body experience that a beaver can have, right? Yeah. That's. I've thought about that a lot when I used to do a lot of wildlife field work. We would, we'd catch them and then we'd measure them, and sometimes we'd take like a little toe clip or something. I'm like, this is just aliens. Like we are just this is straight up an alien abduction. I worked on one species. It was a southeastern pocket gophers, and. So that one, even the bright light thing was part of it, because we would catch them and we had a trap that went in their burrow, so we'd catch them and then we'd take them out into the daytime, and they got these little squinty eyes, and it's just a completely unbelievable experience for them. Oh man, when I would band birds, it was a similar experience. Like they get caught in a trap, and then what you would do, this sounds mean, but you put them in a bag. Mm-hmm. You put them in a bag, and what it does is it triggers their
like a hormonal response, that the same one that happens when the sun goes down. So the birds actually will calm down, and in some places will go from incredibly agitated to just asleep in a few minutes. And so they'll be calm enough for you to actually band. But then once you release them and then they wake up, like they're kind of groggy, and now they've got this thing attached to their leg. I bet they're, they go talk to their friends, and they're just like, yeah, this big thing caught me, and then it went dark, and now here I am. Like I'm missing 20 minutes. What happened?
It kind of reminds me of eclipses, of the behavior around eclipses, that just changing the light level makes them like shift modes immediately like that.
Yes, I got to make a video about that one time, actually. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So that was actually part of a really, really awesome project we got to do a couple of years ago. I got to work with the NASA Heliophysics Outreach Lab, or their educational wing of the Heliophysics Lab, and that was before the big solar eclipse last year. Mm-hmm. And so we started working with them a year before that to brainstorm and like conceptualize a series of educational videos about eclipses. And we did this on MinuteEarth and Minute Physics. So we made, what was it, 12 videos in total about eclipses. And one of them was the weird things that happen to animals during eclipses. And that video was inspired by the last solar eclipse I saw, mm-hmm. where I was in totality, and like just birds just descended into the trees in mass around me and just started their evening chorus. Yeah. And it was just the most surreal thing because it happened at 11:30 Eastern time.
Right.
Yeah.
Where did you go for that one, by the way? That was like the 2017 one?
It was. I was in Western North Carolina. That was when I was in graduate school.
Yeah, I was at Seiler Bald for that one, in same area.
Really?
And and we were on the mountain. There were tons of people went to Seiler for that because mm-hmm. it's just a popular open mountaintop. And a little to the side, you can see another bald from there called Waya mm-hmm. Bald. And right before totality happened, a cloud moved over and cast a shadow on Wyabald, but not on Seiler. And like, it was like 1,000 people up there. It's probably the most people that have ever been there. And they all turned and jeered at the Wyabald people for a minute. And then the cloud moved right before totality. So everyone got to see it, and it was amazing and everything. But it was just funny. I was like, wow, they did nothing to you. Like, what?
It's funny how quickly we can be competitive. The second we sort ourselves into any sorts of groups, it's suddenly us against them. It's an unfortunate side effect of our human nature, I suppose.
It was totally 50-50 which mountain you went to. They're right next to each other.
My question is, we're both equally in totality?
I don't know well enough to say on the podcast. I think that they both got about the same amount of time.
Okay, yeah. I imagine the track was wide enough there anyway.
Yeah, they're very close to each other, so I think it was pretty good no matter which mountain you were on.
I only bring that up because if one of you was total and one was partial, then you would have every reason to jeer at the other mountain.
True. Yeah, no, I think they did get to totality. Yeah. The amount of time was probably slightly different, but mm-hmm. I don't know which of us would have had more. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, Cameron, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Did you have anything else you wanted to share before we get to the plugs and the sign off?
Just you can find us on Patreon. You can support us on Patreon. That's awesome. Patreon.com/MinuteEarth. You can sign up for our MinuteEarth t-shirt club, which is always a really fun time because that's a new project we're doing where our illustrators quarterly are designing a brand new t-shirt every quarter and sending them out to the subscribers. And I guess long term, we have a book coming out, but not until next year, called How to Not Go Extinct.
And while you're heading over to Patreon to sign up for the MinuteEarth Patreon, you can also power this podcast and get monthly merch in the mail by going to patreon.com/wildgreenmemes. That's memes with an M. Until next time, I'm Rhett.
And I'm Cameron.
And happy Year of the Frog.